Welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Really glad to be here today. This is a very difficult case. And so, if you are watching live, if you are watching on replay, I totally understand if this is a case that you might need to take a break from. I totally get it. The one thing I will say is I found information from Dr. Ramani. So she is a leading expert on healing narcissistic abuse. And she specifically talks about the self righteous narcissist. And when I heard her talk about that, because I was researching for today's video, just trying to dig deeper so that we can try to see what's going on here because the reason why I do this is to try to help share education and information. And there were some red flags. I think everybody did as best they could. The mother in this case, she took her child for a evaluation, multiple evaluations. She attempted to file for custody. And unfortunately, I think possibly due to some things in her history, it seems like she wasn't taken seriously. And there was a legit concern in this case. And so I will not be sharing the treadmill video. So for anybody that knows this case, there is a very problematic video. Oh, I have seen it about 3 times, I believe, and 2 weeks before the victim in this case, Corey, 2 weeks before his death, that there is a video from the father's gym where the father is forcing him to work out. And it's my understanding that the father did things like he called him I'm going to use some triggering words. He called him fat. And this child, what and even if the child was larger, it wouldn't have been appropriate to do that. But he was an average kiddo. This child was not was like average size. There wasn't an ounce of fat on this child. Well, not like it, but like he was an average sized child. And for this father to do this, to me, it seemed more like he was mad at mom for being late from visitation. It's my understanding that this incident happened right after mom had dropped him off late from I think a visit out of town, and she ran into some traffic, and I think she did maybe stay a little longer, but his need for control, in my opinion, it sounds like he took that out on his child. And even his defense attorney tells the jury, when you see this video, you are not going to like him. And once again, I will not be playing the video. It is it is one of the most horrific things I have seen. And it's unclear because it sounds like the child, like Corey, was medically cleared a day before his death. And it's my hypothesis. Nobody knows what happened after mom dropped her son off. Nobody knows what happened, but he knew that Corey had went for a CPS evaluation and that the doctors were aware of the bruises. He knew that. And there's a part of me that wonders, did he try to get out of the child what he said? Did he make him like run up and down the steps? Like what did he do? And the cause of death, I believe, was blunt force trauma. There was a lot of trauma to the child's body, and it is really, 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 it's a very, very difficult case. Denny, when we get to this place, I would love to hear why you think the judge isn't doing a good job. I am going to cover the testimony of Dr. Deacon. So that was one of the doctors that evaluated Corey, because some things were supposed to be kept out, and it seems like some things came up in her testimony that didn't come out when they were asking her outside the presence of the jury about what happened. And so we're definitely gonna talk about that. So we're gonna start with the opening statements. Okay, so I have to say about this comment. No doctor wants to lose a child. Like, especially, so she's a pediatric doctor. She became a doctor to help kiddos. And to me, she's one of the witnesses, besides the mom, of course. Mom showed a lot of emotion, understandably, on the stand. But this doctor got emotional on the stand, and I will be taking a look at her testimony, and then we will be looking at Dr. Ramani's video talking about self-righteous narcissism. Okay. All right. So let's go right into this. Gonna make myself smaller. Gonna see about closed captions. Yes. All right. So this is we're starting with the prosecution's opening statement.
Corey, Travis, Mitchell. He liked the solar system. He liked to play outside. His mom describes him as silly and happy. Corey was 6 on April 2nd, 2021, when his father murdered him. His father is this defendant, Gregor. This case is about Corey and how Corey became the ultimate victim of this defendant's punishment and abuse. During the course of the trial, you're going to hear from a number of witnesses and see a lot of evidence. You'll learn that on May 1st of 2014, Corey was born to Brianna Mitchell when she was just 17 years old.
Okay. So Brianna is Corey's mom, and she got pregnant when she was 16 years old. And it's my understanding that the defendant in this case, that he was 21 at that time. That's my understanding. He was either 20 or 21. That's my understanding. She did not let him know that she had a child. He didn't find out until Corey was about 4 or 5 years old. Brianna, the mom in this case, she does have her own history with substance abuse. At the time all of this happened, it's my understanding that she was sober. There's no indication, because she had unsupervised visits, and it's my understanding that she was clean. There was no indication that she was on anything. The defense is going to try to pin this on mom. The defense is going to try to be like, oh, this is just some injuries from football, or the defense is really going to try to downplay a lot of this. And yeah. Okay.
This defendant didn't come into Corey's life, and neither did the Gregors, until Corey was 4 or 5. Back in March of 2021, Corey's parents hadn't been together, but they shared custody. Corey lived with the defendant, and his mom had visitation. On March 20th of 2021, Corey's mom picked him up for a visit. They went to Pennsylvania, and they saw their family. They were supposed to be back at about 3 or 4 o'clock. They were in Pennsylvania, there was traffic, and they were running late. Corey's mom told the defendant that. But Brianna's lateness, you'll hear, was pissing him off. He told Brianna to drop Corey off at the apartment complex's gym and meet him there. So she did it. Corey and the defendant went into the gym, and you'll see what happened next. Because that gym had a surveillance system, and you will see what this defendant did to his son inside that gym.
I am so glad that we have videos. Imagine if we did not have that surveillance video, because even the doctor, now Corey was playing flag football, and the extent of his injuries, in my opinion, wouldn't have been what you would sustain playing flag football or even just playing, just like throwing the ball back and forth with your dad, unless your dad is like a sadistic jerk. Like this story is really, really troubling, but I work with people that are not in situations quite this bad, but I work with people that are trying to co-parent with antagonistic or difficult parents, and like a co-parent. And so that's why I want to talk about and share this case. Brianna did everything that she could have. She attempted to file for custody. She did what she could, and I believe they had a CPS evaluation scheduled. The CPS doctor wasn't at the hospital, and wasn't able to do their evaluation, because I think it was maybe 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And so that person only works Monday through Friday. Oh, it's just really, really a difficult case. And so
After that day, when Corey went back to school during the week, his teacher, his first grade teacher, started to notice some bruises on Corey. She was concerned. She's going to tell you that after March 25th of 2021, Corey was never physically back in person in school ever again. During this time, Corey's mom was also concerned. She had seen bruises as well. She was so concerned that she filed an emergent application with the court to get custody. On April 1st of 2021, Corey's mom picked him up for her only visitation she had had that week, or during the week, which was 3 hours, and she brought him to a pediatrician. Corey spoke to the pediatrician. The pediatrician saw Corey's bruises. She too was concerned. So she sent Corey and his mom to a local hospital nearby. Ultimately, Corey was seen at Jersey Shore University Medical Center. And while at Jersey Shore, doctors looked at Corey's body. They checked his lungs. They checked his bones. They checked his labs. And shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning, or around there, Corey was discharged. He was medically cleared for release because there was nothing wrong with Corey's lungs. There was nothing wrong with Corey's bones, and his labs were normal. Corey was fine except for his bruises. Now, Corey's mom tried to bring Corey back to the defendant.
he is going to have this glaring look. And this is where I think he doesn't like people speaking negatively of him. I think he doesn't, and I got this from Dr. G Explains, and I have a link to his video. He did cover the treadmill video pretty extensively. And so if you want to check out that video, please, that one is linked in the description here. But Dr. G Explains mentioned how he wants to be in control. And even in the treadmill video, like he's like positioning and posturing himself to make himself big and bad. In my opinion, it's a lot like a bully. And his child, no parent should need that level of dominance and control over their child. He definitely needed. But I think, but to me, that comes from an insecure place. You're bigger. He's dad, Christopher, he is bigger. He is stronger than Corey. Why does he have to prove this? I don't like this. Ugh, ugh. Yes, a lot of contempt for like what's being said. Um, Dr. G's video, like I said, Dr. G Explains, his video was phenomenal. Yeah. Oh, all right. We're gonna keep going. Make sure that you're drinking your water, breathing. If you feel yourself, like you feel your chest starting to get tight, if you feel like because these things can, even as we're listening to this, it can have an impact on your body. And so please make sure to breathe. Yes.
Her visitation was over. And while they were at the doctor earlier, she learned that her application for custody had been denied in that regard, but that a child abuse examination had been ordered within 7 days by a specialist. And so, in trying to keep with the visitation schedule, she contacted the defendant and tried to bring Corey back, but he didn't answer. And so, since it's after 1 o'clock in the morning, Corey's mom and Corey go back to her house in Englishtown. And the two of them get home, everyone's asleep, they go in the basement, and they go to bed. That's where her room is. Corey wakes up in the morning, he has his breakfast, his mom dresses him in clean clothes, and he's with his mom the whole time. And she drives him back to the defendant's apartment in Barnegat. Corey and his mom sat in the car in the parking lot.
There were times during the video where he looked away, and I don't know if his lawyer maybe cautioned him to not look like guilt. I don't know what his lawyer told him or if his lawyer had any recommendations. To me, this just seems like how he is, and it is very, very disturbing, very, very disturbing. I am going to play him crying during the when the I think it's a detective that's talking about the autopsy, and I think they're showing the autopsy pictures. I will just play a clip of that portion once we move through.
Lot. And they said goodbye for what would be the very last time. Corey was walking. Corey was talking. Corey was fine, except for.
So, really great question, Denny, Buttercup. Really great question. Do I think his rage towards Corey was because he didn't know he was born until he was 4 years old? So it sounds like before he knew that he had a child, it sounds like he was going to go to graduate school. It seems like he was going to live a different life. And I wonder if a part of him resented being Corey's father or resented like being a father in general. And I think a part of him resents the mom. And I think he viewed himself as the better parent because he calls CPS himself. We're not going to play that video, but in that video, he tells CPS because so it's the morning that Corey died. After Brianna drops him off, and the dad finds out that CPS is involved, he calls and makes a CPS report. And in there he and I but there's a part of me that wonders if he did that after he had, I don't know, like did he do something before he made that call? Like what's really the timeline there of when he made the call and what all of that was about? But he makes a call to CPS, and he alleges that Corey has a history of behavioral issues, but that he hasn't had any since he's been with him, and the amount of control that he needed over that child. That's where we're gonna. I think once we hear Dr. Ramani talk about the self-righteous narcissist, I think some of this is gonna make sense. So she was 17 when she had him. She was 16 when she became pregnant, but she was 17 when she gave birth.
His bruises. By 9:03 a.m., Corey was back inside the defendant's apartment. You'll hear that the defendant wasn't happy, but he told people, Corey's okay, Corey's all right. Except by 3:48 p.m., this defendant carried Corey's nearly limp body into Southern Ocean Medical Center. He reported that Corey was sleepy and had thrown up. Corey was admitted quickly. He was brought to room 6 in the emergency department. Corey coded. He was intubated. He coded again. He lost his pulse. And by 5:03 p.m., Corey was pronounced dead. This defendant, shortly after, walked out of the hospital, got into his car, and he left. Left the hospital, and he left Corey. You're going to hear from witnesses in this case that will tell you that defendant was found in Tennessee on April 4th. Now, a forensic pathologist that reviewed Corey's autopsy and his medical records is going to testify. He's a doctor. And he will tell you that Corey was a once healthy 6-year-old boy that died from blunt force trauma. He will describe for you the contusions on Corey's body all over, in different stages of healing. He will tell you that the inflammatory response throughout Corey's body was acute. He's going to describe that Corey's heart and liver were both lacerated. Now, what you won't hear is that Corey was struck with a bat, stomped on by the defendant. You're not going to hear that, because the only people there in that apartment were the defendant and Corey. But what you will hear is that the only people that were in that apartment were the defendant and Corey, and that the serious bodily injury that Corey sustained while with the defendant, and only the defendant, were so catastrophic that they ended his life. Now, there are 2 charges in this case. The first, endangering the welfare of a child, and the second, murder. The state must prove both beyond a reasonable doubt. That means you're firmly convinced, and that's a burden the state embraces. That first count, endangering the welfare of a child, is for what this defendant did to Corey in the gym on May 20th, 2021. And that second count is for what this defendant did to Corey on April 2nd, 2021. That's the murder. In order to prove a murder, the state has to demonstrate that a defendant acted purposely or knowingly. But rarely is there a person that can come into court and tell you what someone was thinking when they engaged in a particular act. So how do we prove that to you? We have to look at all the things the defendant was doing before, during, and after those crimes. Now, an expert in digital forensics will testify, and he'll tell you that he examined the defendant's cell phone. And from the defendant's cell phone, he was able to learn that throughout the day on April 2nd, 2021, the defendant was texting with a female associate, making plans for that night. On that same date, 3 hours before Corey died, he took a selfie with Corey on the couch. He also ordered McDonald's during that afternoon, and he did a search on his phone for loss of consciousness, sleepy, and nauseous. You're going to have information before you, and I'd ask you to consider it, about what this defendant was doing all day, at home, at the hospital, after he left. What he was saying to the people at the hospital, to Corey's mom, and everyone else. His texts, his phone calls, his web searches, his selfie, even his garbage. I'm going to ask that you pay attention to all of that. And when you do that, please pay attention to what's happening to Corey that day, that afternoon. On April 2nd, 2021, when Corey was brought back to his father, he vomited, he defecated in his pants, and his body was slowly shutting down. Consider what the defendant's doing while you consider what's happening to Corey. There were a lot of people in Corey's life, and you'll hear about some of them. Some might be positive, and some might not. But don't let that derail you. You all came here to serve as jurors in this case with everything that you need. And those are your life experiences and your common sense. Use it. Corey was alive and well at 9 a.m. when he was with his mom, and he was gone by 5:03 p.m. after only being with his father, this defendant. The state submits that after you've heard and seen all of the evidence in this case, you will be firmly convinced that this defendant is guilty of abuse and murder. Because healthy 6-year-olds don't just die during the course of a business day, and neither did Corey Michelot.
Thank you, Mr. Galucci.
Okay, so we're going to take a breath. The defense is just going to do his job. We're going to listen. We're going to listen, and we're going to point out anything that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm coming into this case after. So I've watched most of. I think they're 4 days into this trial. I've watched most of the testimony, and I do think the state is putting on a very, very strong case. And I will listen to the defense side, but in the defense, they're blaming mom, and mom wasn't there. He was fine when mom dropped him off, and mom had no history of aggression. Mom didn't have any. So I think there was a history of neglect when she was not sober. and that's when her parents came in and took and had custody. But there's no indication that mom was involved in this at all.
In August of 2017, Christopher Gregor was studying for his master's degree at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And he was also employed by Urban Teachers, which was a company that employed people to teach in urban areas. When he found out he was being sued for child support for a child he had never met, nor did he know he fathered. And that's where our story begins. Once again, I'm Mario Bellucci, along with Andrea, and we represent Christopher. And although Ms. Schron just gave you a tidy little box with a little bow around it, that is far from what we believe the evidence is going to show you. As a matter of fact, the judge just told you that nothing Ms. Schron said is evidence. As a matter of fact, nothing I'm telling you right now is evidence. The only evidence you're going to hear is going to come right from that chair. And I'm going to tell you right now that our version of this evidence looks nothing like Ms. Schron's evidence. The evidence is going to show that Christopher was notified by a court document that he had to take a paternity test, and that was in 2017. You will hear that by court and whatever, by 2018, 2019, he learned that he was the father of Corey in order to pay child support. But he decided he wasn't going to just do that.
Lisa, children in urban areas. No thanks. No thanks.
He wasn't going to just pay child support. He was going to be a father. And he, along with his family, decided that they were going to embrace Corey and bring them into his life. At the time that Christopher learned he was Corey's father, the mother, Brianna, was living with her mother and another individual. And you will learn that that individual and Brianna split up. And it was right after that split up that they notified Christopher that he owed them child support. You will hear that Christopher decided to move in with his family in Monroe, New Jersey, right here. His father David, his mother Carolyn, and they took care.
So that's why I wonder if a part of him, so it sounds like him learning that he was a father, it sounds like his life changed significantly. And he moved back with his parents, and that's not the child's fault. If a parent decides to do that, you do that. And Christopher had full physical custody, and Brianna had unsupervised visits.
Care of this young boy. They bought him a bicycle. They taught him how to ride. Taught him how to play soccer. Taught him how to play baseball. Taught him how to play football. And at that time, they shared custody with the Mitchells. Then, somewhere around March of 2020, because of some challenges that Brianna Mitchell had, she no longer had custody of Corey. And custody went to Mr. Gregor. He was given full parental custody, and Ms. Mitchell was not to have any visitation with Corey. And as those challenges continued, your evidence will show that Rebecca Mitchell, Brianna's mother, asked to have visitation, which was granted. And at that time, Brianna was still not able to interact in Corey's life. You will see that through time, Brianna came back into Corey's life, thanks in part to the Gregor family, who assisted her somewhat to get through her challenges, and then agreed slowly.
I want to say something. So children don't know what's normal and what's not normal. And I think he didn't know at 6 years old. So if somebody did that to my 6-year-old, he might not know that that's not what, let's say his PE teacher. And thankfully, but like, let's say something, a person in authority. And so this was his dad, the person that he lived with. And to me, Christopher, the defendant in this case, I'm trying to use father as little as possible. I'm gonna try to use defendant. The defendant in this case, he seemed to use power and control. And he had, in my opinion, he had an authoritarian parenting style. and authoritarian is what I say goes. And Corey was afraid to tell anyone. He did tell the pediatrician, but he was like, promise you won't tell anyone. Because I think Corey knew if his dad found out that he told, he probably thought he would get in some serious trouble. And the amount of fear that man put into Corey, like I can't imagine. And so I think it took a lot of strength for Corey to come forward and say what he said. We didn't have the video until it was too late. Because, and I don't think dad knew that that was being recorded, because I think if he knew it was being recorded, he wouldn't have taken him to the gym, and he would have done something somewhere where nobody could see it. There are allegations that about like, was Corey conceived consensually or not, and I don't know. There are rumors about it, and so I don't know. And the state that they were in at the time, because there are some states where 16-year-olds can't consent. So in Texas, 17 is the age for consent. So even if a 16-year-old is like, even if it was consensual in Texas, it would be considered, because the age of consent is 17. You have to be 17 years old. So I don't know anything about that part. All right. We're gonna keep going. Breathe, drink your water, eat some fruit, like take care of yourself. This is hard.
To give her visitation of Corey, and they did. Once all of this happened, though, you will see that the Michelots and the Gregors became like the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's unbelievable what you're going to hear in this case is evidence between the two families going back and forth over this poor child. But you will see, and what I will agree with, is what Ms. Schrein just told you about a treadmill video. You're going to see that on March 20th, Christopher takes that young boy into a gym that's part of his residential complex. And in that gym, you see him put Corey on the treadmill, and he begins to work out while he's watching him from across the room. At some point, you're going to see Christopher go over to that treadmill and speed it up.
And the child was, so Corey was already running very fast. And in my opinion, I think Christopher was mad that because I think he was trying to punish him. I think in that moment he was trying to hurt him, in my opinion. And well, the video shows it. He literally holds him and moves out the way so that Corey does hit the floor. He in no way protects his child. He is intentionally causing harm to the child during that video. If you don't have to watch the video, don't. Like I'm gonna have to watch the Cat Williams special tonight to get that video out of my head. I didn't sleep great last night. I needed to see it to prepare for this, but I will never watch it again. Like it is a very, very difficult video. I had planned to maybe show a still, like I had planned, but no. I woke up this morning and I was like, I'm not even going to show a still. Like, please go check out Dr. G Explains if you want to see a breakdown of it.
And you're going to see Corey fall.
Oh.
And you're going to see him pick that boy up 6 times. And 6 times put him back on the treadmill. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to like him. And I don't care if you like him. When you see that video, you're going to be horrified. You're going to be mortified. But I'm telling you right now that the evidence you're going to see of Corey's death had absolutely nothing to do with that treadmill.
Buttercup, I love your sarcasm. I love your, so like this is so painful. Sometimes you have to laugh to keep from like what adult. So to me, Christopher is emotionally immature, because what adult punishes a child because the mom was late? Like, but I think he didn't have anywhere for his rage to go. So we're going to watch, after we finish this right here, we're going to watch Dr. Ramani's video, because we need to all be on the same page with a self-righteous narcissist. Like we all need to be on the same page. Like, once we see that.
As a matter of fact, the treadmill incident was on March 20th. And between March 20th and April 2nd, Corey spent a significant amount of time with Brianna, spent a significant amount of time with Christopher, and actually tried out for a flag football team
Like flag.
here in Ocean County, and did so well in the tryout that the coach actually had discussions with Christopher to raise him up a level.
Okay.
You will hear that Brianna became suspicious of some bruises.
Yes.
Bruises to his chest, bruises to his arms. And I submit to you, those bruises did occur from treadmill. They occurred from football. They occurred from
Football.
boys being boys. You'll hear testimony that on a regular basis, Christopher would take him to a field across the street and play football with him like any other dad. They practiced with him for this tryout. You hear testimony.
I don't trust Christopher's belief of what any other dad would do, because I would not tackle my y'all know I have a 6-year-old child. My son is 6 and he's in the room next door, and I don't let other kids attack him. Or like, we were at the park the other day, and 2 kids were playing, and they ran, and so my son was staying at the park. The 2 kids ran to the other end of the park away from the adults, and they started horse playing. And one of the dads stood up and called his son back to come back closer, because like, it seemed like there was a bigger kid that, from what I could see, the bigger kid was the one that was kind of tackling his son. And he appropriately called his son back, like, hey, and the boys stopped. When the boys were closer to the parents, they weren't wrestling, they weren't doing any of that. And so I do not trust Christopher's understanding or belief of what a normal parent would do, because nobody, my track coach, so I ran track in high school. It would have been illegal, and it was what Christopher did to his son. At minimum, I think he'll definitely be found guilty of the abuse. I don't know if the jury, if they would have convicted him of manslaughter. I don't know if they're going to go as far, but to me, I understand why the prosecution charged him with murder versus manslaughter, because he seemed to intentionally be inflicting harm on his child based on what we saw in the gym video. All right, let's keep going.
And you got Christopher himself, who's actually an athlete who competed in football. You will hear that when she sees.
Oh, and so Karen, I know you're in the UK. So in the US, the apartment gyms, they normally don't have like any staff there. And if they do have a staff there, any parent can work out with their child. So based on what I saw from the video, because I lived in an apartment that had a gym, and it never had like a staff person there watching it. It was just the open gym. It was open 24/7. We had a key card to get in and out. Now, where I live now, there is a gym, and there is staff that like checks people's badges. And I could take my child to that gym. The adult just has to be with them. But if anyone had saw what he was doing, I think anyone would have intervened. Like, hey, man, back off, like, stop that. Because it's my understanding that he was also, we have no audio for that video, and I believe he was telling him like, you're fat, and he was shaming and talking down to Corey. That is my understanding of what likely happened in that video. I hope that helps.
Here's the bruises, Ms. Piccolo, that she makes an emergency application to the court to regain the full custody, by the way, which she never, ever had gotten back from March of 2020. And that application was denied. So she goes to DCP&P.
I keep interrupting him. I don't like it when I try. So there was a great question. It's my understanding. So there seems to be a woman that sits behind him. That seems to be, so I don't know that it's his mom. I was assuming that it might be his mom. There's somebody that sits behind him. And I think I saw somebody else said that maybe mom and sister. Yes. So when you see him crying during the autopsy photo, you see emotion from his mom as well. I believe she'll be sitting back there. It seems like they don't believe that he was involved. She doesn't believe that he harmed his child. This case reminds me of Timothy Ferreter, where there was that history of like Marine training, like this authoritarian parenting and this like physical making him run until he like throws, and he's 6. Like you don't do this to a 6-year-old. It's very problematic.
They start investigation. They tell her, take her to pediatrician, and she chooses Ivy Pediatrics. She goes to Ivy Pediatrics, and they do an exam. They don't really find too much wrong with him, except he has bruises. They do blood work. They do tests. Healthy, just like Michelle told you. Healthy. But they recommended to her that she follow up and that they would want to take her to Jersey Shore Medical Center.
So this part, I'm going to clarify what he says, because the way he says it is not accurate, in my opinion.
To follow up on a child abuse allegation from the treadmill. You will see that Corey disclosed to the doctor at Ivy that my dad made me run on the treadmill, that I fell on the treadmill, and I also fell playing football. You will hear that she went against the advice of Ivy Pediatrics and left.
And so when he's saying that she left against medical advice, so they recommended that he transfer to another ER, and she drove him to that other ER versus waiting on an ambulance or a medical transport. So like that's where I was like, this part isn't completely accurate.
And she took him to another hospital, Community Health Center, I believe it's called.
That's what they
And
told
at
her
that
to do.
hospital, they did another evaluation. And during that evaluation, Corey was healthy, had a few bruises, but still suspected child abuse. We recommend to you that we take Corey to Jersey Shore Medical Center.
And the doctor is going to deny, like, so the paperwork says that day that Corey was discharged successfully. So like whatever that last appointment when she tries to reach out to dad and then ends up taking him back to her house, to her parents' house, I believe, that discharge paperwork was not against medical advice.
What does Brianna do? She leaves the hospital against medical advice. She leaves. She does at some point now take him by herself to Jersey Shore Medical Center, where he undergoes an evaluation. And you're going to hear
Yes.
that when he was at Jersey Shore Medical Center, they found that he had a possibility of something called,
I think the defense would say misstated the evidence. I don't know that they would call it a lie. I think that was definitely because he tried to clarify with the doctor, and the doctor was like, no, he was discharged successfully.
called sepsis, which you'll understand from a doctor. I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer. But doctors are going to testify here. And you're going to understand that sepsis is your body's reaction to an infection. And it's a rapid response to that infection. And that rapid response you're going to hear from doctors will tell you can show a child is loopy, disoriented, nauseous. And Jersey Shore Medical Center told her, Brianna, leave the child here. And she did not. She took Corey home, signed papers against medical advice. She took him home. So she's running from hospital to hospital to hospital, making emergency applications, you're going to hear, making complaints to DCP&P. So what does she do next? She's so concerned. You're going to hear how concerned she is. The evidence is going to show you how concerned she is for her son's safety. You're going to hear evidence that she was so concerned, she brought him to Christopher.
Because she had to. Because I think he had already reported that she had kidnapped him. Like, the defense is trying to be like, if she was so concerned, why did she drop him back off? That's what the court order said. And because I believe he called the police and reported him, it's my understanding that he had called the police. And so she had to take him back. She legally had to. Good gosh.
Because her visitation was over. Remember, she didn't have full custody. Her visitation was over.
And he shouldn't have.
And you're going to hear evidence that when Corey came home, he was tired. And Christopher did not find that to be unusual. Because often, by the way, Christopher lived in Barnegat, Brianna lived up in the Englishtown area. You'll hear testimony that actually, at some point, they were together and actually looking at houses together. You can hear evidence of that. But when he arrived, he was tired. And yes, Christopher did not find that unusual because he would often come back from Brianna's house and he was tired.
Now, he was up kind of late, but I don't believe that it's to the level that they're saying. So my child has had to be up really. So we flew from Virginia to Florida last year, and our flight was delayed like so much that the airline gave us each a $200 credit. Like, and we're flying back to Florida this year using that credit. But and we're going to take an earlier flight. But like this whole thing is just so I'm gonna try to see how much more of this I can take. But yes, opening. But I like hearing what the defense attorney is trying to do. He is trying to spin this evidence in his client's way, and that's why we just breathe and I roll my eyes and we get through it.
So he looked in bed and he slept. And he's on the phone with a woman, I believe her name is Marcy Brogna, and they're making plans to go on a date. And he's talking to her about what's going on in the house, that his son is there, that he's tired, that he's sleeping.
Hold on.
And then you're going to hear testimony, I believe, from him.
Did he say that he slapped him? I need to go back. Oh, he slept. Okay, there we go. He slept.
And he slept.
He slept. Okay, I got it.
And he's on the phone with a woman, I believe her name is Marcy Brogna, and they're making plans to go on a date. And he's talking to her about what's going on in the house, that his son is there, that he's tired, that he's sleeping. And then you're going to hear testimony, I believe, from his mother, Christopher's mother, Karen. Because at some point, Christopher gets concerned because Corey's now been sleeping for a long time. So he calls his mom. Mom, I'm concerned. Corey has been sleeping quite some time now. And his mother just said to him, it happens every single time he comes back from their house.
We're blaming mom now?
Sleep. So let him sleep.
Blaming mom.
And then he ordered Grubhub. He ordered a Happy Meal.
Did he tell his mom that he lost consciousness? Did he tell his mom that he had thrown up? Did he tell his mom all of that? Because if I knew any of that, I would say, you need to take him to the hospital. Okay.
Assuming that at some point Corey would awaken. And he did. He woke. Said he wasn't feeling well. He had some milk. And he went back to bed on the couch. You're going to see that Christopher took a picture of Corey on that couch and sent it to this woman, Marcy Pryor.
Why? That's weird.
How Corey was sound asleep on the couch.
That's weird.
You're going to hear testimony that when he did awake, he was complaining of leg pain. Serious enough that Christopher was concerned. Began to throw up. You're going to hear testimony that he was loopy. You're going to hear testimony that he looked like he was drunk. And you're going to see Christopher drive him to Southern Ocean Medical Center. And you're going to see him pull up to the emergency department. And you're going to see him carry that little boy into a hospital. And you're going to see him standing there holding that child.
Because he doesn't want the consequences of his actions. So often individuals that are sadistic, they don't want the person that they're torturing, they don't want them to go. I don't think he meant to unalive him. I don't know that was his actions. Like, he should have known that if you do all this to a child, that's what can happen. I very much think he planned to continue to do what he was doing to this child. So these are just my thoughts, just my opinions, my thoughts. I don't think he wanted, but or he now has to look like a good parent. Now he's going to try to blame it on mom. I don't know.
Child in his arms, which seems like hours before anybody comes to help him, and they do.
A few minutes.
And they come and they help him, and they take Corey away, and they start to do some testing. And then they decide they need to do a CAT scan. And while during the CAT scan, Corey seizes, goes into cardiac arrest. Life-saving techniques are now used to try to revive him. And he does. And it sucks. This is a kid. No child should die. No child should die. But it's not murder. And you're going to hear testimony from doctors, experts. You're going to hear testimony from Dr. Larkin, who, by the way, Dr. Larkin has no skin in the game. This is a doctor that comes to the hospital. He's from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner here in Ocean County. He has no idea what the relationship is between Christopher and Brianna and Christopher and Rebecca. He's got no clue. He just evaluates the child by science and medicine. Dr. Larkin found that Corey's blood results from Southern Ocean showed incredibly high white blood count, high glucose, and high lactic acid, and said that's all indicative of sepsis caused by an infection.
And so the other doctor is going to deny that, but I guess maybe they have an expert. That's going to say that. So that's as much of that as I can take. This is Dr. Ramani, and she talks about 5 types of narcissistic parents. We have skipped to the end of this video just to listen to the self-righteous narcissist, and I am gonna play this, and I have the link to the full video down in the description. The interesting thing, so as a therapist, I was trained to treat individuals with narcissism. Within my regular training, I did not receive training specifically on how to help people that were the victims of this type of harm. And her work has been transformative. I was able to see her speak I went to a conference in DC, I think back in March. I was able to attend one of her trainings. Um, she is phenomenal, and so we are going to listen to her talk about this fifth type, the self-righteous narcissist.
For a child, this is a very strict and limiting childhood in many cases. Self righteous parents are often quite rigid, punitive, judgmental, and the child is raised with a strong sense of conditionality, a sense of that you have to follow the rules to be loved. Self righteous narcissistic parents are often quite authoritarian as well. Children raised like this often believe that this kind of parent values the rules of order more than they actually value the child. And into adulthood, that kind of rigid, cold, and choosing morality over love and being there for your child can result in some self devaluation. If you had this kind of parent, you had what might have felt like more of a militaristic or ridiculously strict and judgmental childhood. Self righteous narcissists, even when they have plenty of money, can be very, very cheap, miserly. And while there is some virtue, I strongly believe in the virtue of developing a work ethic and a child having a small job to make some money of their own, the cheapness of the self-righteous narcissist often meant an inefficiency that was unnecessary. And when they could have helped family members and their own children with their goals or lighten some of the stress in that, and they could have done it easily, they would often wield money in a very punitive way.
Your mic, Elaine. Sorry. So they described the apartment that Corey and the defendant that they were living in. They describe it as being very sparse. It was extremely sparse. So this fifth type is the self-righteous narcissist. Self-righteous. So this isn't like a I don't know who came up with the five types. I have the full link down in the description. This isn't like a DSM diagnosis, but I really identified with what she was describing. And I thought this language really helped me better understand what I was seeing in Corey. All right. Sorry, Christopher. Good gosh. Sorry. In the defendant. Okay.
Having a parent like this can often result in lots of self judgment going into childhood. In the worst case, if you have this kind of parent, you might actually have been sort of infected by their rigid moral mantles and sort of keep staying to that rigidity. In some cases, we see extreme rebellion if you're raised by this kind of parent to the point of harm, putting yourselves in risky situations and acting out. But in general, having a parent like this can fuel a person with a chronic feeling of the sense of shame and judgment trailing you wherever you go. If you are co parenting with a self righteous narcissist, be prepared for financial debates about the smallest things for the entire period of having minor children. They're often quite ritualized and obsessive around all kinds of details. And even if they don't really enjoy the kids, they will fight over the extra 3 hours of custody they are entitled to because one time traffic meant you got home a few hours late from a 3-day vacation, despite you not holding them to the same standard. So it can be maddening. Or self-righteous narcissists, if you have to do this with self-righteous narcissists, they will often be quite openly judgmental about some of the rhythms of your household. Your children may have to adjust to going back and forth between one home that's rather rigidly regimented to a fault, and then perhaps if your home is healthier, to the more responsive rhythms of a healthier home. We also know that narcissism often also develops out of a cultural or generational dynamic. Perhaps parents who, for whatever, where they came from or what was happening when they were children, who endured trauma or were from cultures characterized by authoritarianism, very, very sharply demarcated economic stratification, from cultures that are very patriarchal and top down and familial structures. These patterns may also sometimes be observed in members of a family who they themselves had or have or had parents who had also endured the tremendous stress of a difficult migration experience or a difficult refugee status or war or other unrest where they were living. These are sometimes families from a cultural perspective. We can also see that families in which loyalty is everything, and it's almost a blind loyalty, difficult family members can often get enabled because of these cultural and his family historical issues. She's been through so much, that's why she's difficult. Don't say anything. That sort of kind of a sequence. If you were raised by a parent with these kinds of histories behind them, these really difficult histories, you may have felt very hopeless and caught between two worlds, the culture in which you live and the culture of your family. You may have felt stifled or silenced by these patterns, but you may have also, and may still also, feel very guilty at pushing back, knowing your family or your parents' history, leaving you in a permanent sense of dissonance, knowing that they had gone through so much, you might have had an easier path. That explains some of their patterns, but you're still struggling. And even as an adult, struggling on how to fit your family into your life. If you are co parenting with someone who has had this sort of generational or cultural issues contributing to their narcissistic style, you may have tried throughout the relationship, throughout the marriage, to attempt to understand their culture and the origins of these patterns, and may have even justified your partner's behavior to yourself and your children because of knowing what the family, their family or in-laws family or has been through. And your former partner's family may have had very different conceptions of child rearing than you do, and you may also have different conceptions of child rearing than your in-laws. Your children may be actually quite confused by all of this and also feel guilty if they know about their family and their cultural history of that other parent. So it can also cause a tension in there.
All right. So to me, the most important things the things that she talked about that I thought related to this case was the rigidity, especially around time, because I think Christopher did that. I think Christopher was extremely rigid around that part. Breaking the cycle is so important, and I do think on this Tuesday, unless this trial wraps up and there's a verdict by Tuesday. But I think they still have a lot of witnesses, and so I think this trial has another like week or two left. Um, on Tuesday, I plan to do a video talking about attachment wounds. So that's my plan. I'm gonna post something on Monday that might be a little triggering, but we're gonna talk about it for on Tuesday. And so talking about healing attachment wounds. Um, like I said, the full link to this full video, the other 5 types, let me see. The other 5 types are the grandiose narcissist, malignant narcissist, let's see, communal narcissist, neglectful narcissist, and self righteous narcissist. And that militaristic precision, that was the part that I saw in this case that made me think of this this particular case. Now, this testimony is going to be hard. This is going to be the doctor that the pediatrician that examined Corey. So she is going to talk outside the presence of the jury, and then the jury is going to come back, and that she's going to say something that's going to cause a problem. And I want for us to talk about that. So let's go on ahead and start here. And I am playing this at about 1.25 speed, just in case anything seems a little fast.
And answer some questions outside the presence of the jury, and then I'll make a ruling, and then we'll have you back in, and we'll bring the jury in then as well. So we're going to swear you in now, and if we have you back in front of the jury, we'll swear you in a second time so they see that, okay?
Okay.
The court will swear you in. Could you raise your right hand?
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
You have a seat, please. And please state your
Y'all might have just changed my whole life. Was he a police officer? That would explain some things. Was he? Now, not every, there are phenomenal police officers out there. There are some people that get into policing as a way to like control, they like that authority. Whoa. That would make a lot of sense. And there's a healthy level of psychopathy that can sometimes be in individuals who are Marines, who are police officers, but they have to have like an empathy and a moral side, and that side of them can't come home. So I work with, I accept TRICARE, not accepting new clients. And I've worked with active duty, retired, and dependents of military service members. And the Marines tends to be the branch that has the most, in my opinion, the people that I've worked with, the people I've seen, the Marines tends to have the highest levels of narcissism that I've seen. But I know, like my father-in-law was a Marine, and he's not a narcissistic bone in his body. And so there are people that can be in another branch of the military that have narcissistic traits. And so um, uh, yeah, y'all know I like to share my thoughts. So this is Dr. Me and names. I put it Deacon, I want to say. Yes, this is Dr. Deacon. And this was the pediatrician that Corey saw on April 2nd, who evaluated bruises.
Nancy, Nancy, Deacon, Deacon.
Thank you, Ms. Schrum.
Dr. Deacon, I'll just ask you, especially while the jury's here, but even now, there's microphones all over the courtroom picking up everything that I'm saying, that you're saying, that we're all saying. So I know it's hard, but as you talk, just keep your voice as loud as you can for the microphones, okay?
Okay,
Thank you, doctor. What is your present occupation?
I'm a general pediatrician, and I work in a newborn nursery at Ocean University Medical Center in Brick Township.
And what was required for you to become a pediatrician?
And she looks a little nervous. I'm going to fast forward past her education. She did all the things. Okay. Lots of education. Okay. IV pediatrics. Let's keep going.
Had my own practice in Toms River, Short Touch Pediatrics, and then I sold my practice to IV Pediatrics in December of 2019.
And then you continued working?
I
with them?
continued working in that practice in their Toms River office.
In 2021, do you know how many offices IV Pediatrics had?
They have had 5 offices.
So Karen, the first witness was mom. So the mother was the first witness. I'm skipping her testimony, so I'm not covering the whole case. There were, I think there, the teacher testified. I thought the teacher did a phenomenal job because Corey was virtual a few days, and I think Christopher, the dad, was keeping him home with those bruises, because I think some of the bruises were on his face, and the teacher saw the bruises on his face, and she didn't know like how they happened or what happened. Looking back, she might have thought maybe I could have talked to the social worker and seen if I needed to report anything. Christopher, the defendant, said that he was keeping Corey home because he had traveled out of state and it was like a COVID thing. I think Christopher said he had been exposed to COVID and he hadn't. In my opinion, Dad was hiding the bruises, in my opinion, because if the child had went to school, CPS likely would have been called. For a case like this, I don't, because I think Dad could have explained it away, like, oh, he fell on a treadmill, or oh, they're bruises from football. I until you saw that video, and in investigations that I've been aware of, unless they're looking at pressing criminal charges, I've I haven't seen them always like request videos of like, normally criminal investigations have a bigger budget to do some of that. I've never seen a CPS case like request ring footage or anything like that. That's just where I am. But all right.
Right. And in 2021, while you were working there, not when you owned it, do you know how many doctors there were is one of the offices in Toms River?
Yeah, the office is still there in Toms River.
How many doctors in 2021 were in the Toms River
I was the
office?
main doctor, and there were other doctors within the practice that covered for me on my days off, and a physician assistant.
Did you have a patient while working there by the name of Corey Michelot?
Yes,
And do you remember Corey?
I do.
Did you see him for an appointment on April 1st, 2021?
I did.
And what was that appointment concerning?
It was an emergency appointment with concern about the bruises and other abrasions and things that he had, and concern that maybe he had been abused.
Did someone bring him in for the appointment?
Yes,
Do you know who that was?
his mother.
Okay. Do you know her name?
I'm
That's okay. And did she stay in the room the entire time?
Yes, while I was with them.
Do you remember about what time the appointment was that day?
It was about 5 o'clock when he was brought from the waiting area to the examination room.
And what did you do?
Well,
when you met
first,
with Corey?
the nurse brought him and his mother back where he was weighed and measured, and then he was brought to the examination room, and he had vital signs obtained. And once that was all done, that included the blood pressure, temperature, pulse ox, his respiratory rate, and his pulse rate. And then he was asked to take his T-shirt off. And when I came in, he was seated on the exam table, and his mother was seated at the in the exam room next to him.
Did you ask Corey any questions?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And without telling me yet, did he answer your questions?
He did.
And were his answers pertinent to your diagnosis?
So for a 6-year-old, Buttercup, this is a good question. I've always been in the room when my child was being examined, and I wouldn't leave the room unless there was a nurse. Like, I wouldn't leave a doctor in the room with my 6-year-old alone. My 6-year-old wouldn't want, like, I'm always in the room for my child's examination. Now, as he gets older, so like when he's 15, 16, like as he gets older, the doctor will probably talk with him privately. But younger than, I want to say, like 12, 13, I think it's rare for the doctor to meet one-on-one. Now, a CPS investigator would talk to a child one-on-one, and that so the CPS investigator likely would not have the parent there. They would likely take pictures. I don't know if any of them, I know they marked where the bruises were. I don't know if anyone at the hospital took pictures. Sometimes they do take pictures. My child had we were trying to figure out like a skin rash, and the doctor had to take a picture of it and send it to a dermatologist, which is because it saved us an appointment. So like I didn't mind. So the doctor got immediate feedback because he thought it was one thing, and it turned out yes, that was what was going on with my child, and we were able to treat it. And so very common for the parent to be in the room. And Christopher is going to call CPS and say that he's concerned that the mom coached the child to say something. But in my mind, he's there covering his ass. Like that's what he's trying to do, in my opinion. Not knowing that there was a video.
In treatment of Corey.
Yes,
And were you trying to determine his symptoms and their general cause?
yes,
Did you document that information anywhere?
I did.
And did Corey answer your questions?
He did.
Okay. And are you able to tell me exactly what Corey said?
Well, I would like to see my record because to be able to tell you exactly what he said.
Did you maintain any records for the patients that you had at IV Pediatrics?
We did.
Okay. What do you refer to those as?
It's his chart.
Okay. And in addition to information about the patient, do you also contain in having your chart correspondence about the patient?
Yes,
Okay. And are all of those things helpful in the treatment that you
yes,
give a patient?
yes.
If I showed you your chart, would it help refresh your recollection?
I'm going to fast forward a little.
May I approach the witness, please?
Yes, sir.
That's 42 for a moment and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
What is S42?
S42 is Corey Michiola's chart.
And after taking some time to review Corey's chart, could you tell me if it helps refresh your recollection with regard to exactly what Corey said to you?
Yes, I can. His mother said as well, or just what?
Wait a minute.
So,
There we go.
okay, so do you want me to tell you what his mother said as well, or just what Corey said?
Just what Corey said, please.
Corey says that he got the chest, arm, and hip bruises and forehead abrasion when he was playing football outside on turf. He said that his dad was teaching him how to catch a football. When I pressed him further, he said he got more bruises when he fell from a treadmill. He said that he had to run fast because his father said he was too fat.
Ridiculous.
Is that all that you recall Corey telling you during his visit with you
Yes,
on April 1st?
yes,
And that statement was important to your treatment of Corey and your diagnosis of any possible medical conditions that he was suffering from.
yes.
I have no additional questions, Judge.
Mr. Lewis.
And how are you, Doc?
Okay,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet
And
you.
you used those statements to assist you in treating him.
Yes,
Judge, I have no objection.
You have no objection to you looking at those statements?
No. Well, not too fat, but it was too fat, I object to, but I don't think it's gonna get me anywhere.
All right, so no further questions of the doctor.
No, thank you.
All right, so Dr. Hayes, you step out, we'll take a few minutes, I'll make a ruling.
So they're going to get upset because when this comes up again, it's going to come up that she was asking Corey for more information. And that's when he provided the treadmill information. And the judge, the defense, people are going to get upset about that part. But to me, she wasn't clearly, they didn't get into that part here. So I don't, okay, so we'll watch when they get mad, but they didn't ask her, so how many times, like, did he willingly give this information? Was this just asking him one time what happened? Because I think when the jury is there, she might say something to the effect of, he asked me to not tell. There's something that he wanted to tell me, but I had to promise not to tell. And that didn't come up during this part, but she wasn't asked that question. And so, oh, okay. So wait a minute. So Christopher's dad is, I don't know. So we don't know anything about his current endpoint, or not current, because he's been incarcerated for a minute. I think he doesn't have bond. I want to say he's in jail, being held during the trial.
We'll bring the jury in. We'll have you back in. Thank you for your patience. Okay,
I'm going to fast forward.
I think
come in under either one of those rules.
so. I think it comes in with regard to the defendant's state of mind and why he was making him run on the treadmill. The treadmill evidence is directly linked.
Okay. So Lisa, this was August 1st. Corey died August 2nd. So on August 1st, I think mom was really concerned about the bruises. Mom filed mom filed for emergency custody. Emergency custody was denied, and mom scheduled an appointment because it was during her custody time. So she scheduled an appointment with the pediatrician, I think at like 5 p.m. on on August 1st, because that was during her visitation time. Okay. Oh, so such a tough case. All right.
To count one, the endangering charge. And so I think it's highly relevant with regard to this defendant's state of mind, the impression that Corey had at the time.
So I don't dispute that, but that would be if the defendant admitted it, made that statement to someone else. But you have the double exception. You have Corey saying to the doctor that his dad allegedly said something. So what's the second exception then to get it from defendant to Corey to the doctor?
I understand what you're saying, Judge. Let me just go to the statement from Corey for a second. I think it gives the impression in Corey's mind, too, of why he was being forced to run on that treadmill. I understand that the statement includes, my dad said I was too fat, but Corey obviously thought that his dad felt that way about him. And I think that, Corey's state of mind and Corey's statements and what he was willing to say and not willing to say are important.
And to me, what this goes to is, I've also seen people use limiting food or like excessive exercise. So excessive exercise can be a form of physical harm to a child. So if a parent makes a 5-year-old run 5 miles or something, like, that would be excessive for that child's age. Or like if the parent makes the child like hold their hands out so long that like they end up with like muscle strain or something. Like if the child ends up getting injured, the parent technically didn't put their hand on them, but the child was injured by excessive physical exercise, that can sometimes come in as child harm. Those are just my thoughts. Not a lawyer, psychologist. I have had to report instances of harm before, and so these are some of my thoughts when looking at cases like this. And if a child had told me that they just fell multiple times on a treadmill, because I don't know that the doctor was able to. I don't think Corey was able to communicate exactly how this happened, because I think if Corey had that language, and he's 6, he didn't have the language to say, my dad repeatedly put me back on the treadmill 6 times and watched me and sped it up so fast that I couldn't, like, Corey wasn't able to say that. And I'm so glad that we have the video. And I don't think Corey said that dad bit him, because he did. That's just weird, and that's just wrong. But like, ugh. But to me, that shows how out of control the adult is. So I expect more from the adult. Like, Corey's a child, and Corey didn't do anything wrong. He And even if a child is and so it's normal for kids under the age of 10, especially before puberty, sometimes they're like a little, like they have like they got the baby cheeks, and sometimes, but I think Christopher was excessively concerned about like how people look and how things look. And but he's feeding him McDonald's. How are you calling the child and then your feet? I'm sorry. um People are the worst sometimes. Not all people. The people I have to cover sometimes tend to be the worst.
Important for the jury to hear.
Any further resolution?
Judge, if I may,
Yes, Ms. Brown, go ahead.
I think the prosecution just highlighted exactly why it shouldn't come in. They're calling for speculation. It clearly draws sympathy from the jury, but it also alludes to other facts that are not in evidence and can't be elaborated on or cross-examined on. It's double hearsay. And I think the very issue that people just highlighted as to why they would like this in is inherent in the video that they've already introduced into evidence. So it's superfluous, it's duplicative, and obviously highly prejudicial against Mr. Gregor for a multitude of reasons. It's not just the statement itself, but there's no ability to cross-examine on it. And then you also have the double hearsay.
Judge, in addition to that, there's information regarding Corey's weight and slow weight gain and whatnot from the pediatrician, and that that she'll tell everybody his weight. So I think it's highly relevant to that.
Well, she's allowed to testify about her own physical observations. So
Right,
I don't have a problem with that.
And the statement was used by her for part of his medical diagnosis as well.
Right, the court's guided by our existing rules of evidence. So while I agree that if the defendant was forcing the child to run because the defendant believed he was too fat, that statement might be relevant. That statement might establish his motive or intent in regard to count one of the complaint. It has to otherwise be admissible. So the only two evidence rules that this court is aware of with respect to the admissibility of statements made by a patient to a physician are 803C3 and C4. 803C3 provides for the then existing mental, emotional, or physical condition. A statement made in good faith of the declarant, which would be the child, of the declarant's then existing state of mind, emotion, sensation, or physical condition, including but not limited to a statement of memory or belief to prove the fact remembered or believed. In New Jersey, it's been well settled for a significant period of time that simple explanations representing physical pain and a narrative description describing that pain are admitted routinely in court, even if not made to a physician. Such statements are deemed trustworthy, especially when compared to descriptive testimony given about the sensation. In addition, 803C4 deals with statements for the purpose of medical diagnosis or treatment. The rule provides a statement that A is made in good faith for the purpose.
Okay, so I think I think the judge is just trying to make sure that everything is handled so that things don't get turned over on appeal. I think that is what the judge is trying to do. Christopher, he just seems just angry, Good gosh.
Purposes of
I'm gonna fast
medical
forward.
history,
Blah blah blah.
statements are cause of a particular. The doctor is first able to testify as their own physical observations,
Blah
and I
blah
find
blah.
that injuries were caused by running on a treadmill directly relate to his present complaints of pain and their general cause or inception, and are directly admissible under both 80C, C3, and C4. Other statements, such as running too fast or had to run fast because his father thought he was too fat, do not relate to that. While they otherwise might be relevant or pertinent, in connection with the case, they have to be admissible somehow. And I'm not sure I agree with the fact that they're too prejudicial. I think they're probably not too prejudicial. And I don't think that they try and create sympathy in the jury. I mean, we already have a video showing the speed being turned up. Anybody, a reasonable observation of the treadmill would show the speed being turned up. But I'm guided by the evidence rules, and I can't find a way to be able to justify the admission of the additional statement that the father makes a statement to Corey that's then repeated to the physician. There's no double hearsay exception, and even
Okay, so it sounds like the judge is going to exclude it. They're going to bring the pediatrician back in. The jury is now here, and she's probably going to go back through her history and everything, and some stuff is going to come out, and we're going to talk about it.
That we see the patient and any contact with the office that anyone makes with regard to this patient. So anything pertaining.
Is the chart helpful, or does it help you document your observations and assessments of a patient?
Yes, everything is in that chart.
And directing your attention to March and April of 2021, did Corey have an appointment to see you around that time?
Yes, he did.
And prior to seeing Corey, did you review his chart?
I did.
All right. When was his appointment for?
His appointment was for April 1st. I would probably like the chart, just if you're going to ask me about the chart, to have it.
Do you need your chart to help recollect what happened when you saw Corey
Yes,
and the dates and times?
yes.
Judge, may I approach the witness?
yes, sir.
Could you take a look at it and tell me if you recognize it?
I do.
What is S42?
It's the chart for Corey.
And would having that chart aid you in your testimony before the jury today?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I leave the witness with her chart?
Any objection to that?
No, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Do you know what kind of appointment Corey had on April 1st, 2021?
He had an emergency sick visit.
Do you know when your office was first contacted by someone to make that appointment?
Yes, I can tell you now.
Are you referring to your chart?
I'm referring to my chart. And so this was on 3/30/2021.
Do you know who contacted your office on 3/30/2021 for the appointment?
The mom called and she spoke to someone in the call, what we call the call.
Uh-oh.
Contacted by someone to make that appointment.
Yes, I can tell you. And so this was on 3/30/2021.
Do you know who contacted your office on 3/30/2021 for the appointment?
The mom called and she spoke to someone in the call, what we call the call center, which is our central message taking center.
Okay. And did anybody else, and I'm going to ask you to refrain from telling me what anybody else said to you, but did anybody else contact your office on behalf of making an appointment for Corey?
Yes.
And who else contacted your office?
DC, PNP.
And what
So DCP&P is their child services.
time was the appointment on April 1st, 2021?
The appointment, and I'll refer to when we actually saw him. Was April 1st at 5:18 p.m.
Corey actually came to the appointment.
He came to the appointment.
And Was he with anybody when he came to the appointment?
He was.
Who brought him to the appointment?
His mother, Brianna McCool Osceola.
And when he was brought in for the appointment, where was he taken?
I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
He was taken from our waiting area.
Else in the room for
And
Because
his
we talked
pulse
about
and
this part.
his breathing and his pulse ox. He was sitting there, and the nurse had asked him to take his shirt off. So he had his pants on and shirt off, and he was sitting quietly on the exam table. And his mother was seated in the exam room next to the exam table.
And did you make any initial observations when you walked in of how Corey looked?
Yeah, so as a pediatrician, we rely not just on what patients say, but how they're acting, because they don't, kids don't just tell you something hurts. A lot of times they don't, or they don't. So you're always looking from the very start. How are they sitting? How are they looking? Do they look alert? Are they looking bright? Before we set an eye, even before we touch a patient, we're looking for all the evidence, everything we can get. And he was sitting quietly. He was breathing easily. He didn't look in any distress. And he just looked very serious. And I'd say, kind of contained, like stoic, kind of, just very sitting.
Did you observe?
Just in case that is not how my child sits in the exam room. When my child is in the exam room, he's unless he has my phone, it's like, Langston, stop that. Put that down. I need you to come back here. Don't play with the paper. My child is not sitting there like a whole adult stoically. And yeah. And I do see that it sounds like there's a defense expert that's going to talk about possible pneumonia or something. Like that's what they're going to claim. They're going to claim that he died of sepsis. But I believe the medical examiner ruled it, what's the word? My gosh, the medical examiner said blunt force trauma, and that he had the lacerated liver and heart, I think, or something like that. I saw a question. Somebody said, good question. Lisa, let me go back up. So I think that's because of the father. Like, it sounds like the father was very regimented and controlled, and he was probably scared because he's there to talk about the bruises. He knows how he got them, and he likely doesn't want to get his dad mad. That's what I could imagine. I've seen kids his age that have experienced trauma do things like that, where they are parentified in a way, or they are where the adult is expecting a 6-year-old to just sit there and not move for like 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And that's, most 6-year-olds are going to need to move around. He was not showing any signs of a concussion. He was evaluated, and this was 10 days after the treadmill incident. So the treadmill incident and whatever happened on April 2nd, those are 2 separate days. We do not know what caused Corey to get sick and not be here anymore. Some type of physical force, something happened to him that day, and we don't know what happened. Okay.
Corey's mom.
And so she was sitting, and she looked just very worried and concerned.
Did you observe any interaction between Corey and his mom?
Well, he would look at her, and they would just look at each other as I was asking first the mother. Now I'm going to find out from them what is the history, like what's happened, or what are you worried about? So what we call, and she was listed as the independent historian. She was the one to give the history, as parents do, first.
Did you tell Corey anything about his visit with you that day or the purpose of his visit?
So based on, I do give children a chance to say what hurts or what's the problem or what happened, if it's an injury, how did you get hurt? So I did that, and he at first didn't want to say anything. Should I guess I don't know. And so I explained to him that in order to help him, I had to know how he got hurt and what happened. And still he hesitated. So I said, Corey, we can't help you if we don't know what happened, and please, and don't worry, because I need to know so I can help you be safe.
So Buttercup, I didn't hear that the teacher called CPS. Did that come up during the trial? I watched parts of the testimony with the teacher. I wasn't able to watch all of it. Let me know if the teacher. I wasn't aware. I knew the mom had, and I wouldn't be surprised if, because the teacher saw the bruises too, and the teacher testified to that. And then the defense attorney got a little like combative with her for no reason, like over something silly. Because I guess Christopher, the defendant, was going to travel with Corey out of state. And like, so the teacher just thought he wasn't going to be there, but the dad still wanted to, sorry, the defendant, because I don't want to use that word for him. The defendant still wanted to log in and for him to still be able to attend school. And like the defense got combative with her for no good reason, in my opinion. So the expert at this point, you can hear her getting emotional. This is upsetting. We know what happened to her patient the next day. The next day, after going back to dad, Corey dies the very next day. And so, yeah, it's understandable that the doctor is getting upset. I would try my best to maintain that if I could, because I don't want to come off as less credible. Because sometimes, if especially as an expert witness, if you show too much emotion, you could come off like you're on mom's side and like you're against dad. And so yeah. So I do know that mom called a lot, and I believe the mother has a lawsuit against social services. I do believe mom filed a lawsuit. It hasn't went anywhere yet, but I did hear that mom did make a bunch of phone calls. But I think because of mom's history and her history of involvement with CPS, when she's making the call, I don't think they're taking her seriously. Mom is the visiting parent, and I've seen if it's the parent making the call, sometimes I've seen DSS not act as quickly on it because they think it's a custody thing, which they want to be handled in the courts and not by CPS. Um, And I don't know what mom's previous complaints were. I don't know if it was dad calling him names. I don't know what happened before that. Yeah, she has a lawsuit against them. Like my heart breaks for her. She did her best. It because it was up to the court to step in, and I don't think the court had all of the information. Because even if you think, okay, a child fell on a treadmill and got significant bruises, you wouldn't think of what the video shows. You wouldn't think that. And that's exactly what happened. It reminds me of the Ruby Frankie journals. Like I knew what the Frankie children, what the two youngest went through was horrific. And then reading what was in those journals, it was way worse than what I thought it could have ever been. And she wrote it all down proudly, which is weird.
And did Corey give you any response?
And so he looked at his mom, and she said,
You can't tell me what anybody else
Okay.
said. But did Corey give you a response?
he did. He said that he got the chest and arm and hip bruises and the forehead scrape when he was playing football outside on the turf. And he said that his dad was teaching him how to catch a football. And when I pressed him further, that's a lot from playing football. He said he got more bruises when he fell from a treadmill.
And the speed that child ran at first. So Corey was able to successfully run. It might have been like 4, because he was running fast and he was able to successfully do it. It was probably like 4.0 or something. Like he was able to run for maybe, it looked like 2 minutes or something. He did it for a period of time. And then I think dad got mad and wanted to punish him and turned it up even higher. And nobody, like his little legs just could not go that fast. And we all know what happened. I can't with that video.
What was his demeanor while you were speaking with
Guten
him?
Tag.
He was speaking with you.
Well, as he was explaining this, his mother teared up and started to cry, and then he got tearful as well.
Did you end up conducting an examination of Corey?
I did.
And could you tell me what that examination at first consisted of?
So I reviewed his what the nurses had found out, and he had a normal blood pressure. He had what we call a pulse ox test, that tests on the finger, this oxygen level. It was 98%.
And the defense is going to try to say 98% is low. And depending, so like if children have allergies or just for whatever reason, sometimes it can be a little, like 98 isn't ridiculously low. Hey Sarah, yeah, we started a while ago, but welcome. We are into the doctor's testimony right now.
His pulse rate was 90, and his respiratory rate was 24. His temperature was 98.6, so it was normal, no fever. And I considered those vital signs normal for his age.
Did you go on to conduct an examination, like a general one, or ear, nose, and throat, or anything like that?
Yes, and I'm noticing here when I said my first thing is generally just look at them, and you had normal activity and normal interaction. I forgot he did tell me that, I don't know, I have something in my notes that you might want to.
Why don't you show it without speaking, until you show it to Ms. Strong, I'll have counsel decide for it.
So this is hard. This is a really, really hard case. And I think as an expert witness, as a pediatrician, as someone who got into this work and field to help children and to treat children, I think she wants to help Corey now to help get justice for Corey. I think this goes downhill after this, but we're gonna watch it real quick. I'm gonna fast forward. And I don't know if the listening device is for him to hear what's happening over at the sidebars. I don't know.
And jury room for just a couple of minutes, as I indicated,
Yeah. And so
sometimes things I need to
right now the judge is excusing the jury.
address outside your presence. I thank you for your
And they're going to talk. And they're going to rule again. I think it's going to come up of whether this statement can come in or not. I think I'm just going to play this part. Go back and watch that part of the video.
The jury's been excused. The state wishes to seek to introduce an additional statement that Corey may have made to the physician. And again, a condition about the admissibility of evidence has to be heard outside the presence of the jury, which is what we're doing in this trial.
Dr. Deacon, while treating Corey, did he make any additional statements to you?
So I see in my record that I wrote in it, he did.
Do you need your record and able to?
Yes, I do.
To be able to recall that, Judge, may I approach the witness?
Sure.
Still S42.
And this is what's in the record is so important. I'm going to finish my notes later.
So I wrote in when I began to examine him, he became tearful and he asked me to promise not to tell anyone what he said.
Judge, that's the additional statement. And was that that statement made during the course of you treating Corey, making an assessment and a medical diagnosis? Of
Yes,
Corey?
as I approached him to ask him, what hurt, or,
But some of your, done with your direct in this?
Yes,
part
Judge.
here? Thank you.
Yes.
Any cross-examination as part of this hearing?
And they didn't object. But then I think they're going to throw a hissy
May I
later.
indulge you to step outside for a moment while we have any discussion, and we'll bring you back in.
State of mind under 803C3.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Bellucci or Ms. Ramani?
Your Honor, I don't know what that actually says about his state of mind. I don't know what that statement means. There's no clarity, and as a result, I think it's irrelevant for the purposes of medical treatment, but also
It is
the state of
vague.
mind. It doesn't add anything. And it calls the jury, and whoever hears it, to speculate as to what that might mean. For those reasons, it should not come in. And I would also ask to strike the portion of the doctor's testimony during her direct examination that did not come out during the prior 104 hearing, where she made a reference to consistent prodding of Corey to get additional information out of him. That was not made clear or did not come out during the 104 hearing, because we could have addressed it then. And as a result, I think it should be stricken.
Thank you. All right, so first let me deal with
But to me, the defense didn't ask any clarifying questions. Does that make sense? And so to me, they're benefiting from not having like not having asked anything, but I think they were trying to keep their strategy to themselves. I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney. I'm just sitting back watching.
The new statement that I'll ask the state about the additional request. Evidence Rule 803C3 provides that following type of statement could be admissible. A statement made in good faith of the declarant's then existing state of mind, emotion, sensation, or physical condition, such as intent, plan, motive, design, mental feeling, pain, or bodily health. So this typically means that someone who is presently saying, I'm in pain, my leg hurts, my arm hurts, whether made to a physician or someone else, those statements are generally considered inherently reliable. People take exception to the hearsay.
I'm gonna keep going
Parts
to the part where they kind of get upset about the fact that this didn't come up earlier.
Corey initially refused to explain what happened, that she was prodding him, that she said to him that she explained that she had to know what happened in order to be able to help him so he could be safe. Corey then said that the bruises, which the doctor saw on chest, arms, head, were from football. The doctor expressed here that she had some disbelief. I'm a little unsure if she said to Corey she disbelieved them or if she's just telling us she disbelieved them. And then when pressed further, he said he felt that he fell on a treadmill. So I just wonder, like, why didn't she tell us that at the 104 hearing? It's the whole purpose of doing that. So now I'm concerned that it was a result of prodding. It was a result of saying, we need you to be safe, which suggests he's in danger. So I'm a little troubled by the fact that her testimony changed or became more detailed in just a matter of minutes. So now what do I do about that? Do I just tell the jury to disregard the whole thing? Or is there some other remedy? Or do I allow Mr. Gallucci to then cross-examine her about, isn't it true you just testified at a hearing outside the presence of the jury and you didn't say that? Because if we did.
So I don't know that she understood that she needed to give her full testimony before, like when they were asking her those questions. But to me, the prosecution is also asking different questions in different ways. And this was hard because this was hard. This was really hard. And I do believe what the judge is going to do is they're going to read back a portion of her earlier testimony. That is what is going to happen. But in their proffer or in their whatever that meeting was outside of the presence of the jury, to me, even the prosecution didn't dig deep to me. Like it seemed like they were getting more into everything, or maybe she didn't understand that she needed to give her full testimony. During that earlier one, her answers were very short, and then her answers were a lot longer when the jury was there. But that's where I think the judge kind of felt, is she is and so I know people are thinking like, is the judge biased? But also she did not give her full testimony during that earlier hearing. But I don't know that they made it clear that she needed to. Because so sometimes I know, like Judge Carroll, like when they did that hearing, Judge Carroll would turn to the witness and say, okay, so we just reviewed your testimony. When they ask you those same questions again, your answers need to be like what you just gave. Like, to me, they didn't do that here. I didn't think and it didn't seem like she had testified a lot. It could be wrong. I could be wrong. She's probably never had to testify for a client who was unalived. Like she's probably never had to do this. She might have had to testify in cases where like people survived. I do think this adds an additional level of stress and anxiety to the situation. I want to just, for the benefit, I don't know why. So in this part, we are going to see Christopher get emotional when they are reviewing the autopsy pictures. And I hope Dr. G explains, covers this part, because from where I sit, it seemed like he was getting emotional, not as like a grieving parent, but more, I don't know. It's weird. But so, and we'll watch it and I'll try to give more thoughts. I believe this is a detective giving testimony about being there for the autopsy.
And when you arrived for the autopsy the next day, what was the procedure initially?
So the initial procedure is the
Uh-oh.
treated as evidence from Southern Ocean Medical Center to Community Medical Center. We have a funeral home. We have funeral homes on contract that transport for us. So in this case, he was transported to Community Medical Center, where he is then placed under the care of their security and morgue, where he's signed in, kept in the morgue, and remains there until we arrive for the autopsy the next day.
And when you arrived for the autopsy the next day, what was the procedure initially?
So the initial procedure is
Okay, so I believe this is his mother. So this is Christopher's mother. That's my understanding.
the bag is brought into the examination room, placed on a table, and we then rephoto that bag as we last left it, which would be sealed and marked. We then rephoto all that again, and then the bag is then unsealed by the medical examiner.
In the whole trial, this was the most emotion that he showed. Lots of people have feelings. That wasn't the one I wanted. This was the one. Lots of people have feelings. Okay. So individuals with narcissistic traits. I don't know him. I can't say he does. Sometimes what happens is somebody is viewed more as an object versus a person. And he might grieve in some way. To me, he didn't seem to show shame. And I thought Dr. G explains that a phenomenal job, just as he's watching the video of what he did to his son on the treadmill. In no way is it like you don't see any shame. Like emotions are expressed typically in like a universal way, unless someone has autism spectrum disorder, unless they're on like medication that blunt their emotional expression. And I don't know what his diagnoses are. I don't know what's going on. To me, he comes off as, and I don't know him, I'm speaking in general, he comes off as very sadistic and very ritualistic, very rigid and angry, and he had no control over his anger. And as a way to control his anger, it seems like he tried to control other people. And what I mean by that is I have my clients own their triggers. So my child, if y'all didn't see, if y'all saw me like muted and talking, he's come in about 3 times. One time he came in to get the iPad. The second time he came in because the iPad like froze, and he just came in because now he can go downstairs and play. And dad is in the basement. Dad is here. I am, when I'm here, I'm typically the primary parent, but I wouldn't get mad at him if he came in and if he like interrupted the stream. That's not something that would make me mad. Now, if he tried to get on camera, now my emotion would be about his safety. So like I actively like move, like I would shut the camera off, I'd end the stream. Like I'm very protective over him. And so I would not want him on stream. But let's say he was trying to get on stream, I wouldn't take my anger out on him. He's 6. And he's talked about wanting to be a streamer in the future. He wants to set up a YouTube channel playing Minecraft. I don't know. And so, and if he ever did, it would be like a faceless channel, and like we'll see what happens. But my emotions are mine. It is not his job to not make me angry. My emotions are mine. My child is going to do things that trigger anger. But as a mature adult, it is my job to manage that emotion and not take them out on my child. And so, like last night, same child, he was up past his bedtime. And so I went in his room and I was like, "Hey buddy, you get to pick one of these two consequences for tomorrow." And he picked his consequence. He was a little sad, he cried a little, and he got in bed and he went to bed. But I didn't go in there and yell and scream at him. I didn't shame and blame. I didn't what were he's 6. He tried to stay up a little bit later. It's his job as a 6-year-old to try to push the boundary. I said the bedtime. I put him to bed. And then, because something was like, you need to go check on him. I went upstairs, and sure enough, the boy, light on, coloring on the floor. I'm like, dude. And so it is my job to manage that. I don't think he was mature enough to do those things. And so I wanted to show that video of him showing emotion. Oh, 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 oh. Lots of people say no tears. I don't know. He is at least wiping the nose. Like sometimes people like they wipe the same eye, and I don't know. Oh, so Dr. G's video is very, very triggering. And so if you do not want to see the treadmill video, do not watch his video, because his video is covering him watching the entire, and there are times where it's paused at some of the most horrific parts. Okay. All right, let's see. Ooh. Several times, watched body language and facial expressions. He seemed filled with rage. Agreed. I think he's mad that they think it was him, or that I don't know, like he just seems mad about the whole situation. And like nobody wants to be charged with like murder, but like don't murder. I don't know. Like he's innocent until proven guilty. He's innocent until proven guilty. We will see what the jury decides. I do think at minimum he will be found guilty of the treadmill video. I don't know what the defense is going to present. I will definitely cover his verdict. And if people speak, if something happens, or if the judge says something so if he is found guilty and if there is something relevant for sentencing, I will definitely cover that. Huh. I love it that part is helpful. So I was not parented the way I parent my child. I was parented with blind obedience. So blind obedience is I told you to go to bed, don't ask me why. Like I told you, do it. Do not. And now for my child, we walk to school most days. And and I remind him about like looking before we cross the road. And if he's like, why? I ask him, why do you think? And he's like, to be safe. I know, like the boy knows. We've been doing this since he was 5. And but I don't mind that he asked me why. I want to raise a thinker. So to me, people that are raised with blind obedience are raised to not trust their own voice. They are raised to not question authority. And individuals that are raised with blind obedience typically have a higher instance of possibly being like harmed and not reporting it, because you don't question authority. You don't speak back. Like you don't have a voice. Kids are to be seen and not heard. All of those toxic things. Now, I'm not a permissive parent. So like my 6-year-old doesn't get to pick his bedtime. He's probably going to hate the time 7:20 a.m. when he's an adult, because he can't wake me up before 7:20 a.m. unless he's had an accident. like unless he's like it has to be a crisis, like a major thing to wake me up before 7:20 a.m. He can't go downstairs before, because the boy is a little elephant. And unless he's being sneaky, I will hear him go downstairs. It will still wake me up. And so we have different boundaries and things in place. And all right. There haven't been a lot of objections in this case, and from what I've seen, both sides seem to kind of be letting things go. Uh, yes, my mom does watch my streams. She does not mind me talking about how she parented in the past. We have a podcast. We don't record it anymore. It was called Legacy Moments. There is on my channel. There's a podcast tab, and we talk about healing mother and father wounds. We talk about cycle breakers. So she considers me a cycle breaker. So my mom, my grandmother and grandfather were harmful to their children because it was legal. I don't even know that there was no CPS in the like 60s, or like I don't especially for black people, I don't think that was a thing. My grandmother, the stories that my family sits around and tells, it is trauma. Like they're like, remember when grandma beat uncle, so and so down with a frying pan? Ha ha ha. It's like that is trauma. Trauma. And my family has a dark sense of humor. And I think they don't hold anything against their parents. They know their parents did the best that they could back in those days. How they were parented was the norm. That was normal. And the way my mom raised me, that was what. So it was never anything to like legally be harmful, but just because it's legal doesn't mean it's right. So in Virginia, it is legal for me to physically discipline my child, but I just can't leave marks. But I don't think it's right that my child can hit me and I press charges. And if I hit him, it's okay as long as you don't do da da da. Like, I don't think that's okay. I think hitting children sends a mixed message because it says people that love you are allowed to do this because I love you, and I don't think that's right. I believe in body autonomy. I do have my own history with some stuff that I don't go into here, but I think I would. I'm raising my child in a way where God forbid if something wasn't okay, I want him to come to me and to know what's okay and what's not. I always knew that my mom loved me. She did give me a voice. So even though she was like the blind obedience, she was kind of a little liberal with it. Does that make sense? Like, because, but she said some things that landed me in the guidance counselor's office because the things that she would say, she parented out of fear. She got me to comply out of fear. And I am a bit of a rebellious person. A bit. I That's why I don't like oppositional defiant disorder. I might have been diagnosed like I didn't like rules. I didn't like them. Now I was motivated by not losing privileges. That was very, very helpful. And when my mom got more consistent, that helped my behavior. And I was never a bad kid, but like I was a little manipulative, but she didn't have good boundaries, and so she got better boundaries, and I was less manipulative because she had good boundaries. And so then now my child, he is a little me, and it's healing to my inner child to get to nurture him, nurture his emotions, teach him things. And he does have an ADHD assessment in his future. Hopefully this summer we are on a wait list. Because I'm a psychologist, it limits who I'm comfortable taking my child to because all the people I would refer him to like were friends, and so my friends can't assess my child. And so I had to find somebody else, and they had a bit of a wait list, and so we'll see what happens. Hopefully this summer. But cycle breakers, let's unite. So the black sheep of the family triggers everyone else's trauma. Does that make sense? So as you heal, if you get pushback from the family, it's because your healing triggers, like it makes what they're doing not normal. Because dysfunction can function. In a family system, dysfunction can function in a weird way where everybody knows not to talk to so and so after he's had 2 beers, or like we all know that this person, like everybody knows how to walk on eggshells to make the dysfunction function. And for me now, I call it out. I would rather be at home watching paint dry than around people that I don't feel safe with. Like I just won't do it. I'm thankful that in my family I do feel safe with my family. We're able to have difficult conversations, and everybody is healing. A lot of my family, we've all went to therapy. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental Health Awareness Month. And in all of my videos, I always put resources for how to find a therapist. I did a whole video. I have a whole resource called Therapeutic Resources. It's a tab or a playlist. I have a whole playlist with just tips for anxiety or tips for whatever. Like I have a whole thing with tips. Buttercup, I hope you're talking about water. Go drink you some water. But Lisa, yay, Rebel Children Unite. Yes. So I'm a leader. So when I see my child, I see a leader. I see some people might say strong-willed. I see like he is passionate. He knows what he wants. He knows what he doesn't want. He's a very good communicator. And we have conversations about how to make sure that he's staying in our boundaries. Because I'm still, like we're his parents. We get to set the boundaries. But so our child's bedtime is a little later than most people. So like he's 6. For a lot of 6-year-olds, they go to bed at like 7:30 or 8. And I don't even get home until 7 p.m. And so we do dinner about 7. And he's normally in bed by 8:30. For some people, they might look at that and be like, oh, like you're a horrible mom because your kid goes to bed at, I don't know, like some people might have thoughts, and their thoughts are their problem. Like, I don't care. Being being free of other people's opinions. Oh my, because I used to be a major people pleaser, like a huge people pleaser. It used to bother the mess out of me if people did not like me, if people like thought negative things about me, and their opinion is not my problem. Like it's just it's it is not my problem. And he did speech therapy, so he doesn't even have his stutter anymore. I wish I had done speech therapy as a kid. Your favorite teacher told you strident. Strident? So our what was it? Oh my gosh. Our cohort in graduate school, we were called, was it pesky? No, it was like some word that meant pesky, but it was basically our professor called us very, very pesky. Hey, Lawful Law, welcome, welcome. Make sure to go back. If you didn't get to check out the video, I shared a section on Dr. Ramani. I am going to go back and add, what's the word? Chapters probably by tomorrow. But life might happen and it might be like Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know. I'm going to try to go back and add them in. So if people want to jump to a specific part, they can. Wow, didn't realize how much of a people pleaser I was. And so there is a trauma response that I didn't learn until COVID. Like, good gosh. So I didn't learn about the fawn stress response. And I think that's what, me being physically disciplined as a child, it turned me into a big people pleaser. Like that was so like I didn't become aggressive. I didn't know how to manage my anger, but like I turned into a major people pleaser, and I got really sneaky to not get caught. And I used to lie because I didn't want to get caught. I always got caught. I should have just told the truth. When they tell you, like, oh, just tell the truth, it'll be better. But like, will I get caught? I wasn't a good liar. And so, yes, yes, yes. Like I said, oh, let me see. I might be able to share the picture of me getting to see her. Let me see. Let me see. Yes. And her book, it's called It's Not You. She has a phenomenal book. I have it in my Amazon list. It is called It's Not You. Share screen. Let's do, it's this one. Yes. I was able to see her speak, and she was phenomenal. And I learned so much. That's when I learned, and I had already followed a lot of her stuff. That's why I signed up for her seminar. But I got to hear her speak, and it was really cool. I might be on the news in Utah on Monday. And if I am, because I pre recorded an interview. And so if it airs on Monday, I will stream my reaction to it here and we'll get to watch it together. It's about Ruby Frankie and Lori Daybell, comparing the two of those. And so if that does air on Monday, I will share that. It was super, super cool. I did not have my setup. So like I had to, so that's the like let going of the people pleasing stuff. I I was thankful I had some like backup makeup at my office. Like if I had known, I would have worn something different. But like, so I'm being honest with you all. Like I'm being really brutally honest, like how I get in my head. But it wasn't where I would have canceled the interview because I didn't have like the outfit that I wanted. But I am going to have like a spare outfit in my bag for the future. Or I'm keeping it in my trunk or something like that. I'm gonna have a spare outfit for the future. Yes. So Karen, did you do the It's Not You? Is that the book you did? She has quite a few books, I think. Um, the It's Not You is the one that I've recommended to some clients. So it is, so I don't want to say too much about it yet, but it's going to air in Utah and then it'll be on YouTube, I think. So are you in Utah? If you're in Utah, I think I can tell you. Okay. Yeah. So is anybody in Utah? If you're in Utah, I think I can tell you. But I'm gonna stream it here. So I don't think it's gonna be like a national story. I think it's just gonna be local to Utah, and then hopefully there will be a clip on YouTube. And I think the person said they were gonna send it to me. So I think it should air on Monday. I did not have my psych nerd stop. I think I had on my love earrings. So like the carrot, my signature, and these aren't even like my design. My signature love earrings, but I had on like a therapist cardigan, but I wanted my updated camera. I just had my regular Mac camera, but it is what it is. I'm glad I got to do it. It was an honor, and so that is super cool. She has a YouTube channel, Dr. Ramani, and if you just type in narcissism, most of her videos are going to come up. Like she has done so much work in this field, and so yes, okay. So it might be like CBS, but I don't know what time. So I don't know what time. It's going to be like a Ruby Frankie, Lori Vallow comparison. So I don't know what time. Yay! Okay. So, but we'll see. Okay. We'll see. So we'll see what happens. But I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. We've been here for a minute, 2 hours, 23 minutes. Go drink some water, breathe, watch something funny. This was a tough one. Okay. So, like, the weather isn't good here. I would say go outside, but like in Virginia, it's kind of dreary. Take care of yourself, and I will see you all next Saturday. I hope y'all have a good one. Bye.